Mabuhay, this is Bob from Love Beyond the Sea. My channel is about marriage to a woman from the Philippines. So international marriage, since I'm here in the United States, and this channel should be able to help anybody who is looking to marry somebody internationally. And I want you to please subscribe to this channel because I have lots of helpful information to people about going about that process of meeting somebody overseas to actually being married to them and staying married. I want to talk about deal breakers today. This will actually be a couple of parts since I'm limited in time here on the TikTok version. Deal breakers when seeking a Filipina. I had some. You probably have some too if you've given it much thought. And what's a deal breaker for one man seeking a Filipina to marry isn't always one for somebody else. Somebody might say, oh, don't do this, don't do that, but it might bother them more than it does you. In this video, I'm going to list some things that might be a deal breaker for some men. I'll even talk about the ones that were deal breakers for me. So go where you're wanted, may not be where you are to look for a wife. No law against looking overseas. So the first thing I will talk about here, some would consider it a deal breaker if the Filipina or a woman from some other country wouldn't want to immigrate to their country. Many Filipinos don't want to leave the Philippines. Contrary to popular opinion, many foreign men aren't ready or able to pack up and leave everything behind and head for the Philippines. I would want to find out about this sooner rather than later. When I was looking for a wife on Christian Filipina back in 2015, if the profile said that she would not relocate, and that was one of the things on there, I would not try to talk her out of it. If that part was left blank, then I would not consider that person if they were just against relocating. And that's not something you should assume. You should talk about it. Many aren't interested in relocating and shouldn't be pressed into doing that. Now, when you've located a Filipina you're serious about, it doesn't hurt to ask her if she immigrates to be with you, if she will be thinking about retiring with you in her country down the line. So she might come to you, but then might not want to stay with you. And by the way, when I was talking about a woman not wanting to relocate, some men might say, well, that's great. I don't want someone to relocate. I want to go there. Another guy might say, oh, is she hiding something by not wanting to relocate? A lot of these things, if you're not getting straight answers, you might not know exactly what's behind her intent. But she comes to your country, don't assume that she's going to want to spend the rest of your life there. She might say, well, into her mind, I think I can convince him to go back and live with me in the Philippines. There's another thing. Could be a deal breaker, and you should talk about. Many Filipinos prefer to stay there, but will marry and live overseas as a necessity to provide for their family back home. And if given their choice, they would also prefer her and her husband to retire in the Philippines. That's if he wants to do that. If I met a Filipina that I wanted to marry and she told me that one day she hoped we would retire in the Philippines and I was dead set against it, I would be honest and tell her I won't do that. It just wouldn't be fair to lead her on. Now, we've actually discussed that with my wife and I, which wasn't something I was thinking about at the start. And we thought seriously about it, but I don't think that's going to be what we're going to end up doing. And so before I move on from this aspect of location, if the foreigner is willing at some point to relocate to the Philippines, well, something else they would have to talk about is agree on where. City life, province life, that could end up being a deal breaker. How? If they can't agree where to live. For me, I would want to be not far from a hospital. Is possible another deal breaker for the foreigner could be how far away from her family he wants to live and she wants to live. I've spoken a lot about this. I personally think it's wise to live close to her family, close enough that they can see their Filipino family member without, hardship, and that your wife would be able to see her family. Both of them spending some time together. Might as well if you're going to be in the Philippines. A lot of men would consider a Filipina who wanted to have a baby as a deal breaker. This one is very important. And this is often in dating profiles, so they both can know right away how they feel about that. Again, if they're answering truthfully, a woman could say, oh no, a baby not important, don't need that, I just want a husband, and then get married and realize, that the baby is what's most important to her, like is very normal for women and probably most Filipinas. I think everybody should be honest about their intention of, wanting to be a parent or not. If you won't marry a Filipino who wants children, then she should be told this as soon as it comes up, in my opinion, right away. Let me know what you think about any of these topics, potential deal breakers, or if you had some when you're looking for a Filipina. My situation, we married very quickly. What was it, 56 days is all? And coming up on 10 years in May, being married. And we didn't put much thought into the child part. I think she assumed she would have a baby and has not been able to. I feel horrible about that. We've certainly tried, but I don't live with any guilt because, I wasn't trying to deprive my wife of bearing a child. It's very important to a woman from the Philippines. Now, she might already have a child or two. You will see that as being fairly common. Could be a deal breaker, right? To some guys, this is not an issue at all. They say that's fine. A couple kids, no problem. To other men, it's a deal breaker. Might not be a deal breaker in the Philippines, but it might be a deal breaker if you're living in a Western country. This was a deal breaker for me, as I recall, back to about March of 2015. I was not looking for somebody with children already. I wanted to focus on having a relationship with a Filipina alone, just us, as it had been a very long time without a relationship. Guinness Book of World Records for that. So I was looking for only Filipinas that did not have children. Religion will be a deal breaker in many cases. Don't forget to talk about that. I found that what I was looking for in this area. I don't see success for those who are mismatched religiously. For example, just off the top of my head, this isn't even in my notes, Catholic, non-Catholic. Depending how serious she is about her Catholicism, that could very well be a mismatch. You're free to leave a comment about that as well. Here's another one. Let's see how many I can do here. Another one would be your wife, her willingness to work in your country after she gets her visa. Is she going to do that? And again, I wouldn't assume. I would just ask. I knew my wife wanted to work. We had some discussion about whether she would work if we had a child. That's another thing to talk about. If the foreign man is simply against his Filipino working, he's to tell her sooner than later. It's also possible the Filipina will not want to have a job in her new country. If so, the man will need to consider that. She may very well want to be a worker at home with her child. Now, a deal breaker on the Filipina side would be if she married someone who had too many financial obligations to provide what she needs for security, or wasn't able to help. The standards by our government that are established to show the ability to provide for a Filipina are way too low, in my opinion. Surprisingly low. Another one not talked about much is if your family was absolutely opposed to it. Deal breaker to me. At least one I would certainly consider. Is it possible with time and getting to know the Filipina better, your family would see her as a suitable wife? If bringing her into a family where she will be openly rejected is a possibility, then how is that good for the Filipina? Maybe in time, while you're dating, before you get married, she might grow on your family, earn their trust, but that's a big one, potential deal breaker. And to be clear, I think the wife is more important than her husband's family, and I tell Isaac that she is a priority over anyone in our family here in America. And I told my mother that. She is my priority. But that doesn't mean I would marry her knowing the animosity I'm getting talked to here, or rejection she would endure when she got here. That's never acceptable. She would surely be miserable. Well, I am being called away, and so I'm going to have to end this video, and we'll do part 2 next time here on Love Beyond the Sea.